Hello and welcome to the penultimate race of the IndyAM Championship by FSR, brought to you by the race 3D Rep Simlab and IMB Raceway. Obviously this is round 4 here at Virginia. We've got 35 laps of racing for you today, and it is also getting to that point in Championship now where we're going to start looking at the numbers and see what people need. However, it's probably not going to be decided today, but obviously with only 2 races left, it is getting very close. So Cameron Roger here for you today. Alongside me, as always, is Ewan O'Leary.
Yeah, hi again, Cam, and hi to everyone watching at home for this race, final road course race of the season for both AM and Pro Series, which is a little bit of a shame because they've been great so far, but we're going to some ovals from 2 weeks on, and then beyond that at Indianapolis the week after as well. So looking forward to those, but hoping that this final road course will provide us with some more excitement as the rest of the season has before it. Yeah, you mentioned the championship as well, that it's probably not going to be decided today, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. Thomas Vack is still predictably leading it at the moment by 22 points over Simon Freelich. It's quite close for second place in this championship at the moment. It's quite packed up behind Vack, who is running away with it a little bit at the moment. So if he wins today, then even if he doesn't mathematically secure the victory, then he's going to be in an extremely good place going into Apple Valley.
Yes, the Apple Valley still has that 35 points for a win, but the AM Championship obviously doesn't have the most drivers in it, so even if you finish at the back, you're still going to be getting a decent amount of points. And for them, it's not double points, so it is just whatever position they finish as normal. So as you can see here, today, 18th of October, we got to Virginia. Then in 2 weeks' time, we go to Apple Valley for the 5th race, which is the final race for the AM guys, because then we have the Indy 300, where there will be a form of pre-qualification and a sort of bump day kind of scenario to get some of these AM drivers into the Indy Pro 300 as well. So there will be an amateur race on that day, but it won't be for the championship. It will be purely to get themselves into that Indy 300. So we're looking forward to that over the next 3 weeks. So yeah, lots of stuff coming up over the next few weeks, and we have now moved into the qualifying session here at Virginia. It's obviously one of the more longer tracks, second longest on the calendar, in fact. So yeah, we're going to see how these guys go. It's very tricky. This track is so tricky. There's been a lot of chat on the forums on Discord of people not maybe liking the track too much, but it is always, you see Freelich there all over the sliding all over the road. But yeah, it's just one of those tracks that is quite difficult, and I'm pretty looking forward to how this is going to go.
Yeah, it is a very difficult circuit, and this section as well, in an IndyCar with not as much downforce as you sometimes expect. It's a very tricky section of the course, and then this ever tightening. You can almost treat this as one corner, and Freelich is choosing it as his own drift corner at the moment, trying to get as much sideways as possible, it seems, through the Oak Tree corner. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult circuit. It always seems just slippery around here for some reason, even when it's not raining, and when it hasn't rained previously, it seems slick and slippery for some reason. And Freelich just locking up and wiggling into the braking zone there. A very tricky braking zone where you're trying to go around corners at the same time as slowing down from 300 kilometers an hour. It's a bit difficult, and that's a bit difficult as well. He goes right around at the final corner, and the grass here takes you an awfully long way off the circuit. That could be a problem in the race, but obviously we've got Thomas Vack at the moment on the top of the standings, and that's to be a little bit expected, but Stopalski is doing very well there in second, just 700ths off.
That's a very good time, isn't it, by Stopkowski. Vack there, obviously probably the favourite to win the championship with how those standings are looking. So to get within a tenth of him is very good, especially on a longer track. You generally see the lap time spread out a little bit as the difficulty and the number of corners increases on certain tracks. But yeah, that is looking very good. Thomas Vack once again going to the top of the time. So I look at Godek, who has made a bit of a mess there of the hairpin, but it is an outlap. And what you'll notice actually with a couple of drivers, and maybe even as we get into the Pro Championship a little bit later on the Races YouTube channel, you might see drivers actually trying to actively warm up their tyres on the outlap, because there are no tyre warmers in this series. So they obviously come out of the garage at about 29 degrees centigrade, which is generally what the temperature is. Then they have to get all the temperature that they can before coming out for their 3 qualifying laps. Because remember, they are limited to only 3 hot laps during this session.
That was a huge wiggle. Not the best start to the lap, in all honesty, from Marek Godek there, the man who came second last week in Sebring, breaking down into turn 1 now, and this ever-opening corner, kind of the opposite to the Oak Tree one. Difficult to squeeze on the power, though, in these cars at the best of times, and especially while you're trying to accelerate around that corner. Just missing the apex ever so slightly of turn 3, and now a little fiddly section, really. A bit of a chicane and then another right-hander just here. It's a little bit difficult to get right once again, but Godek has actually done that pretty well, and this is looking like a clean first sector. We'll see, it is purple in the first sector, so currently going faster than Vac, who was setting the pace in the first round of times. Now through the S's, and this very tricky, deceptively slow actually, left-hander over the crest and now into the Oak Tree corner. Much more controlled than we saw on the last lap by Freelich, although as I say that, he just gets it ever so slightly wrong on the exit as well, so just showing us all how tricky it is in every way, this circuit. It's got so many different kinds of corners and traction zones and all kinds of different things going on that it's very, very difficult to get right all in one go.
But he's gone purple again in that middle sector, so this is looking good for a provisional pole. Godek has struggled a little bit with qualifying in the couple of races that he's done. I believe he missed the first race, but then came back for round 2. And he's always been quick in the race. I believe it's actually 2 podiums he's got in the last 2 races as well. By qualifying is where he struggled. So if he can get himself up the front, this could be really good. That looked like an okay final sector as well. He goes to the top on a 31.7 by almost half a second, actually. That is much quicker than anyone else, as Thomas Vac is now coming to respond. He's gone green, which means his personal best, but it doesn't mean he is the fastest of all of them. However, that could still be getting a lot closer as you come into, or towards the final 3 minutes of this session. And he's now coming out onto this unbelievably long back straight, especially in these Indy cars compared to like a Formula 1 car. They're not the quickest in a straight line, so it does take them a little bit longer down this straight as well. So I'm sure we're going to see lots of slipstreaming as we see him going purple in that middle sector as well. So that was a good reply, but he needs to finish it off now, coming through the final 2 chicanes, which make up sector 3. Got to send it all over the curbs if you can, not make a mistake onto that grass, and now all you can do is wait for the line. Can Thomas Vac respond and get back on provisional pole position? He's got a long way to catch up, 4.5 tenths. Where can he put himself? He goes all very close, only half a tenth behind, but still there in second place.
Yeah, and just under half a tenth behind Marek Godek, who's currently in front of him right now. Very, very good time and a good battle between those two. It's all riding on this final run, though, because that is where it's all going to count. Brantholm here, interestingly, is on some prime tyres, which is a little bit strange, considering they're the slower compound of the 2 that you can choose. We've seen all this season, because it's the sensible thing to do. Just go on the alternate tyres, the softest of the tyres, the fastest of the tyres, so that you can get the best lap time. But Brantholm seemingly, I saw him do it on his first run as well. He's more comfortable on the primes for some reason, and that's an interesting one. No idea why he's doing that really, but it's just throwing a bit of change in there. I'm not entirely sure what that's all about.
Brantholm does have a grid penalty, but there's no rule about qualifying on your start tyre, so there's no reason for him to be, or anyone to qualify on anything other than the alternates. But maybe he's just knowing he's going to be at the back anyway, or pretty much is confirmed he's going to be at the back, so maybe he's just wanting to do something a little bit different. We'll have to see. As we're now looking at Barbkov, he's done a personal best in that first sector, but he has not set a time at the moment. So these are obviously going to be personal bests. So no purple. So we don't really have a direct reference of where he is going to be. He has struggled a little bit with the qualifying in this car this season, despite being pretty quick actually in some of the races. But now come out of that final corner, the long run all the way up to the start finish line, which is really, really far. We might actually see an overtake to the line, and he's gone in there at 5th place with a pretty decent gap behind him as well. So it looks like he's going to be in the top 5, but he is actually only about a tenth off Freelich in 3rd place, so he could very easily get on that second row.
Yeah, just with a very small improvement, and he can jump up a couple of positions there as well.
I was going to say, actually, he doesn't have enough time. There's only 30 seconds left in the session, so that's going to be a one and done from Barbakov. He has obviously not been able to complete those other laps, as we now see Stepkowski coming towards the final sector to complete his final lap. And he hasn't improved in that second sector, so this might actually not be an improvement from him. But still, 4th place would be quite a good place to start, as he now comes out of the final corner, the number 26, keeping it fairly tight, as the straight is actually really a massive turn the whole way around. Can he improve? No, he stays there in 4th place.
Yeah, it's no improvement there for Stepkowski. Freelich and Vac are both on personal bests at the moment, but are they quite enough to get pole position? That's the question here. Marek Godek is out there on a lap also, currently in the first sector. He's going to be the final man to cross the line in this session, and it's going to come to a very exciting end, this one now, to see who is actually going to take pole for this race. Now, Freelich really soaring at the wheel through the final sector here, throwing it across those curbs, but actually using his quad to pretty good effect. It's not like when we saw him earlier, he was all over the road, but this time it's a lot better, and now he's coming up towards the line. Where is this going to be? Is it going to be on the front row? Not quite. He does improve by 2 tenths though, and he might just about be safe in 3rd. Here's Vac though through the final corner, and he is going much quicker.
Yeah, he's on a purple middle sector. Can he get that half of a tenth that he needs to get that provisional pole position? Because Godek is also on a lap. Where's Vac going to put himself? Can he get pole position? Yes, he can, by almost a quarter of a second. That's a huge improvement there. With Godek actually not improving, this looks like it could be pole position unless Godek's got a big answer here in this final sector. But he's hit the grass about 3 times there, so he is going to be coming in. And that is the conclusion of the qualifying session here for round 4 of the race IndyAM Championship. And once again, Tomasz Vac has pulled it out. He's got that pole position, but Marek Godek is looking very close, and I think there's going to be a good fight between these two during the 35 laps.
Yeah, Vac was not exactly running away with the race last week, but eventually he did run out winner. He did get pole as well, but Godek pushed him a lot harder for it this week, and he really had to pull that one out of the bag right at the end when it mattered, and he was able to as well. So definitely deserves that pole position. He's got some very fast drivers right behind him though. I'd say the top 6 are all within a second at the moment, and Brantholm might be able to do something in the race as well, considering he was on the primes for almost all of that session. So maybe he's in with those guys as well. So yeah, it could be a very close race actually.
Yeah, and we need to look out for some other people towards the back, such as Troy Haight. He's at the back. Don't know why he didn't qualify. I don't believe he had a penalty, so we don't know what he's going to do. It would be his debut in the AM series as well. So yeah, a couple of things that we need to look out for, and obviously discuss maybe the strategy as well. But we'll take a quick tour around this track from the one and only Michi Hoyer.
This is Formula Sim Racing. My name is Michi Hoyer, and I welcome you to the presentation lap for round 4 of the Race Indy Pro Championship by FSR. We are at Virginia International Raceway, and I'm proud to present you the lap as we go into turn 1. Surely the best overtaking spot. The car extremely tricky to drive with its stiff rear and its wide power band and the high RPM ranges. Into turn 2 and 3 you want to roll in pretty carefully, because the next chicane requires maximum precision. Car wants to step out on every occasion. Be gentle on the throttle. In second gear, up through the tight chicanes. 5, 6, 7, 8. First sector done. Up into 8, 9, 10, 11. Quick chicanes before the left-hander downhill. Make sure you don't run wide, because the grass can be dangerous here. And then into the tight hairpin, very difficult braking zone through the right king, and then slow down for the hairpin on the throttle as early as possible, going through the gears. Nice slipstream up on the back straight, I want to call it, up to 14, 15. Very heavy braking zone, very difficult braking zone as you go to the left and to go down the right into the downhill over the crest. Car wants to become loose. You want to stay away from the curbs here, left and right into the final complex, and as early as possible on the power. Want a short shift, because otherwise the car may spin on you, and then it is going across the line. Guys, that is one lap around the tricky Virginia circuit. You will see the drivers struggling. You will see a lot of spins, a lot of incidents and moments, and I'm pretty sure you guys will have an exciting race to watch.
Welcome back to the Race IndyAM Championship by Formula Sim Racing, brought to you by IMB Raceway, 3D Wrap and SimLab. We're here for 35 laps around Virginia. Drivers are just completing a warm-up session, so we're moving to the race in just a moment. But Ewan, it looks like Thomas Vac once again is the man to beat, and one thing he's done pretty well the last couple of races is get his strategy absolutely spot on. So I think that's once again going to be the major talking point of this series.
Yeah, it is. Of course, these guys got to make they're going to be making 2 stops in this race. That's the likely thing that they will do in terms of their fuel game and all that's going on here in this series. But they have to use both compounds of tyres, of course, the alternates and the harder prime tyres, which is always interesting because the alternates, they can make it through a stint pretty comfortably, a fuel stint. So you're not really limited by the wear on any of them. He's just trying to spend as little time on the primes as possible, and trying to get into clean air when you're using the alternate tyres, which is always something that Vac has been very good at because he qualifies on pole, he gets the alternates on, he gets to the lead at turn 1, and then he controls the race from the front. He did come under fire quite a lot actually in the Sebring race last week, but he still was able to control the race from the front. He was the most consistent driver on the whole field, and that's what ended up taking him home his second victory of the season. We'll see if he can make it 3 in a row, and that would be very special indeed.
Yeah, would be very good. Obviously, he got that second place in Indianapolis as well. Ferris Stanley took the win on that occasion, but yeah, he's been very good all season, and would certainly be very good very good for him if he did win the championship. But there are still 2 races left. Anything can happen, and despite the points being fairly close, you still have to be classified. So if you obviously DNF, then you will get 0 points. So it's quite important that you do keep going to get the points here in this championship. But yeah, Simon Frelick, 22 points behind us, along with Stepkowski. But then obviously Barbakov and Andrea Maharazoa, they're all very close there. So if any of these guys have a good race and maybe make up for the fact of Vac having a bad race, that could be quite good as well. I would expect most drivers to be doing a 2-stop strategy. Fuel here, I believe, goes around 13 to 14 laps. So we're looking somewhere in the region of 2 13 to 14 lap stints on the alternates, and then a slightly shorter, maybe 8-9 lap stint on the primes.
Yeah, that's going to be the order of the day. We think, as I mentioned, spending as little time on the prime tyres as possible is really what you have to do here, and it's also kind of depends as well on where you take the alternates and making sure that you're in clean air while you do it. But here's the starting order. Thomas Vac, as predictably, on pole alongside Marek Godek, who pushed him hard. Frelick third and Stepkowski just behind in 4th. On the 3rd row, it's Barbakov and Adrian Harazoa once again in 6th place there. Perseus Miram is in 7th, just ahead of Daniele Cogna from 8th position, and then Troy Hayes is in 9th, just ahead of Brantenholm, who did have a grid penalty. I think it was 8 positions, but it doesn't really matter because he is going to be demoted to last place either way. So that's why that's kind of solves that confusion from the qualifying session.
Yeah, he had a penalty. If you remember, there was an accident between him and Barbakov when he came out of the pit lane, and that's what he got a grid penalty for this race. So that is what he's having to serve that for. So yeah, he's obviously going to be at the back. But we saw, I think it was Marek Godek last time out had a back of the grid penalty, and he still managed to get up to 2nd place. So it's certainly possible to get up the front if you get your strategy correct.
Yeah, it is. It's by no means impossible, that's for sure. But Virginia International is going to be a little bit more difficult to overtake, I would imagine, than Sebring. There's a few less overtaking opportunities, and the one you do have after that long back straight that you've got is into the tricky corners, the kind of roller coaster section, as they call it. which is not too far from the truth, really. Braking while twisting and turning up and down, it's quite crazy, especially even when you're on your own, never mind going side by side with somebody else. So that is difficult, and looking forward to seeing if anybody can pull that one off, but a little bit more difficult to overtake the here than in Sebring. A little bit more difficult of a circuit as well around here at the moment. I'm noticing that from Cam slowing down when he goes through corners when he talks, because he's concentrating. He's trying not to crash, but the drivers aren't far from gridding up now.
Yeah, drivers will be gridding up in just a moment. Yeah, it's certainly a difficult track. That's for sure, and obviously the low grip doesn't help that. So drivers grid up 80 kilometers an hour, and it's going to be interesting to see if anyone actually comes a cropper to that. Obviously, we saw in the qualifying session there was a couple of drivers who did make mistakes. So if that obviously translates to the race, you could lose quite a lot of positions, because I'm sure the field is going to stay fairly close together as we have this 35-lap race, although they're just now coming around the final couple of corners to start this race.
Yeah, they are. It's going to be an interesting race, and as I said, the grass is quite. It takes you quite a long way off the circuit here, so if you do have an off, then it's likely to be pretty big. But yeah, Vak just now coming through the final corner, and now this final kink, and he's going to be in control of the field with Marek Godek right beside him.
So now they're coming the long run, and as soon as they get to this tyre wall, the leader now has control of when he goes, and as soon as he does, Jacob Reed, race director, will be calling the green flag, and here they go. So we are now going green, and he's got an absolutely amazing start as Thomas Vak. He's going to be unchallenged down into turn number 1. Freelich gets up into second place ahead of Marek Godek, who didn't have a good start there, and he's actually now being challenged by Barbakov down the inside as well. And I think Barbakov has actually just got that. If he can get the exit, so Godek has lost 2 positions here coming in the first couple of corners, which is not going to be the best for his race. Interesting to note, there was a spinner there in the background. I think that's Konya in the background. But interesting to note, Vak once again has gone for the alternates, whereas Freelich and Barbakov have gone for the prime. So Vak, expect him to be very quick at the beginning here and trying to build a gap up, but also expect Freelich and Barbakov to be making a slightly earlier pit stop to get rid of those prime tyres. But it looks pretty good so far, with all drivers staying fairly clean apart from Konya at the back there.
Yeah, it was a little bit of contact at the back of the field, but nothing too major. The real bad thing, though, for Marek Godek is that he's now stuck behind some prime tyre runners, which is really not good for him at all, because he was wanting to make some real good lap times in these early laps on those tyres, and now he's stuck in traffic, not quite able to do that. Here he comes on Barbakov, though. He's going to need to make these overtakes work pretty quickly, and he is down the inside. He gets that move done, and in the background we've got Andrea Maharazoa challenging Stepowski and forcing him to go wide, and he gets through into 5th position, qualified 6th in this race, just under a second off of pole sitter Vak, and he's already into the top 5.
Yeah, it's looking very good so far for them, as Stepkowski was also having a look there at Andrea Maharazoa. So yeah, a few battles up and down the field as they come to complete that first lap of 35.
Yeah, Thomas Vak just lost a bit of time through that final sector to Freelich somehow, but he's really stretching out that margin now, and Godek, after a poor final corner from Freelich, has actually lost or got a position, so now he can chase the driver up in front of him now, can Godek, and this is going to really set the race up. We'll see what happened here then on board with Godek. Just see, Freelich goes wide on the grass, gets a really poor exit. That was nearly a big accident as well on the front straight. A little bit of miscommunication between the two, and that could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate, or fortunate I should say, for Godek, because that was very close to a big accident, as you say. So yeah, good stuff for them for keeping that safer. That was very close indeed, as Freelich gets a slightly different line there to Barbakov, and is now going to be working his way up in the slipstream, but actually got such a good exit there. I don't think Barbakov's going to be able to challenge. However, Stepkowski now on the back of Andrea Maharazoa for the second lap in a row, both on the prime tyres. Who has the best straight line speed? It is Stepkowski, and that was a fairly comfortable move. So it looks like the slipstream is fairly powerful actually at this track. So it looks like overtaking is going to be quite possible on that back straight.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're within that and you can get towed along ever so slightly as well. If you haven't quite got the pace of the driver in front of you, you can just sit in that slipstream and just tow yourself back up towards them again. And it can be a little bit frustrating if you're the leading car, but you're only a tenth or two faster per lap. You can easily keep getting pegged back and feel like you're helping almost the driver behind you. But obviously it's a very difficult circuit, and despite the fact that we've got that long straight where drafting is really quite prominent, the rest of the circuit is purely twists and turns, and it is all over the place. So it is a very difficult circuit to try and follow the leader and get towed along by somebody, because there's just so many places you can make a mistake, so many twists and turns along the way, that it does make it very, very difficult. But Vak is making it look easy at the moment ahead of Godek. He's holding that margin. This is kind of what happened at last race, really, at Sebring. He got this lead, he got it to about 1 second, 1.5 seconds, and he held it there. It was actually at 3 or 4 by the first pit stop window, but he just holds it at a gap, and he likes to control the races from the front, and it makes it a lot easier for him. That's why I feel like Godek should maybe try and push a little bit harder to try and overtake him and try and disrupt Vak's rhythm, really, because every time this has happened so far, when he's got pole position, he's got to the race lead, nobody's ever seen him again. So he needs to kind of disrupt the rhythm if he wants to win the race.
Yeah, he certainly does, but he's not getting away just yet, is Vak. So it's only about 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds at the moment, so Godek is still in that range, but obviously lost out a little bit there with the start because he got overtaken by those couple of prime tyre runners. And now everyone behind these two is on the prime, so these two are probably going to build a pretty big gap. It's already quite a few seconds to Freilich back in third place already, so expect that to get bigger and bigger over the next sort of 10 laps, or maybe a little bit less. So it's now down to see what these guys can do when they're going to make their pit stop, and then see what happens. But obviously these primes are quite a bit slower, as we've seen during the other races as well, so it just depends if you want to take them first or last and how that affects your strategy. But Balkov struggling here a little bit actually to stay with Freilich.
Yeah, he is just a little bit. He caught up ever so slightly on the last lap, but it's kind of extending once again. A little bit of an interesting battle to watch here as they kind of... Oh, that was a big slide from Freilich. And he's got a lock up, and he's got nearly a spin. It's a great set. Oh, how has he saved that? That is brilliant. The car control there from Freilich to manage to keep hold of. I felt for sure that he was going to be in the grass on the left-hand side and straight into the wall, but somehow he's held on to it, and he's still going. He's still got the position as well. That was very well. That would have got the heart rate up, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was a decent moment, and somehow he still had the straight line speed and the exit out of turn 12 to get onto that back straight. So that is quite a good job there from Freilich, who's now got himself a little bit of a gap, but the gap ahead of them is huge already to Godek. Absolutely massive. It says there's about 10 seconds, although it does fluctuate a little bit as the lap goes on, but it's still many seconds between these two. So that is just the difference between the tyres.
Yeah, it's a pretty big difference for the moment, but don't forget, it is going to close up again towards the end of the race. That's the beauty of these races, really. They kind of extend out, and they get some real big differences between the drivers after maybe half the race, but then it all closes back and converges on each other once again for the final moments of this race. It just depends really on whether Vak and Godek take their prime tyres at the second stint, or if they go and finish the race on them. If they go for the track position option, I would probably go for the latter, try and put them on as late as possible, because you definitely know that you're spending the least amount of time on them as well. When you're doing it this way round, like Freilich and Barbakov and co are doing it, you don't quite know how many laps you have to do on them, because if you get your fuel numbers wrong, then that is an absolute disaster. You don't want to be making 3 stops by any stretch of the imagination. So it can be a little bit difficult to work out sometimes unless you've done a full simulation before. So doing the primaries last is a little bit safer, but you know, it does mean that you're on the slowest tyres at the end of the race, and that's the kind of thing you've got to weigh up.
Yeah, it really depends on that track position and where you're going to fall back into. If you can, you know, sacrifice a few laps and go on to the primes, then it might work. Although at the front, Godek has got all on the back of Vak. Vak has not won this easily by any means. This is going to be a big fight between these two guys. and I would expect both of these have a full tank, or started at least the race with a full tank of fuel. So I think that this is going to be a good fight between these two. And Vak has actually started to make a couple of mistakes. He's missed the last few apexes, so Godek is really starting to put the pressure on. And Godek can still mathematically win the championship, although he needs to get quite a few positions in between them. However, Vak, he has a little bit more to lose, because even though he is obviously in quite a commanding position, he can't afford a DNF.
No, definitely not, and that would put paid to his championship aspiration. Well, it wouldn't put paid to them, but it'd make his job a whole lot more difficult. And trying to fight things back on an oval where things are a little bit less controlled, I think is really not what he wants at all. Because as we mentioned earlier on, Vak likes to control these races from the front, and he will not be able to do that on the oval by any means, and he definitely won't if he's in the midst of a championship battle. I really thought that Godek was going to give it maybe a bit of pressure there to Vak, but he just backed off. You saw at the end of the straight there, he just backed off towards the end of it, so that he didn't get too close, didn't probe too much, and didn't make a mistake himself ultimately. So just playing the waiting game for the moment, and I'm a little bit surprised by that, because he absolutely bombed into turn 1 last lap around. I thought he was going to try and get through all guns blazing down there, but he didn't, and he didn't need to, because Vak looks like he's been off the road. There's a mistake from the championship leader, and he's absolutely gifted Godek the race lead.
Yeah, we were just saying on that previous lap he was starting to make a few mistakes, so let's see this replay of the number 47 down into turn 1. Yeah, just locked up that tyre, couldn't get it stopped, and once you're on that grass, there's nothing you can do apart from trundle your way back onto the track, losing a couple of seconds, and that is second place now for Tomasz Vak. So Godek has been gifted a really good opportunity here. There's a few seconds between them now, and there's plenty of time left in this stint as well. So if Godek can still use these alternates to good measure, he might be able to increase that lead even more. So it's looking pretty good for Godek so far, as we're now onto Stepkowski, who's on the back of Barbakov. So this fight for third place is not over either, as Barbakov locks up coming into turn 11 and 12. So Stepkowski getting a much better line. That is the line you want to do. You want to almost miss the first apex to try and get the exit. However, that hasn't actually gifted him too much performance this time, but he is getting a bit of slipstream now, because it is such a long straight here up to the braking zone. And is he going to be alongside enough? Yes, he is. He's absolutely dived it on the brakes. You have to go around the outside of the chicane. Barbakov giving just enough space. That's going to get tight through the chicane, and Barbakov just squeezes him out. A little bit cheeky, but he's kept the position there for fourth.
Yeah, a little bit physical on the exit of that corner there, but all fair racing, I think, in the end. Stepkowski came from such a long way back, and he's got that car really stopping very, very well indeed. He did it down into the kind of oak tree section as well, down at the right-handers, and we're going to see on board with him now. That lock-up that he made is going to really haunt him. Look at the way he comes from behind, though, and tries to go round the outside. There's just not much space around there. He was given the room. I think he was just about given the room. It was a car length, maybe a car width, sorry, maybe. But either way, I think it was all fair racing in the end. Very, very close between the two. Unfortunately, they were both able to come out of the other side. Facing the right way, big slide again for Stepkowski. But now this is starting to cost them. You can see the gap to Freelich. It was just under 3 seconds a moment ago to Barbakov. Now it's over 6, or trying to get over 6 at the moment. This is costing them in the grand scheme of things. I know it's entertaining battling, but it is costing them in the long run, and if they want to get anywhere near Godek and Vak towards the end of this race, they kind of need to single file themselves out and concentrate on their own races, but it doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon, because Stepkowski wants to get through as quickly as possible.
And it looks like he's got the slipstream this time round, and he's a lot earlier. He's alongside a lot earlier, so that means he's going to have a nice braking zone this time. He doesn't have to do anything crazy, although Barbakov's trying to come back once again. He might have a little bit of a switcheroo there, but not enough momentum. So Stepkowski has made this position now into the final corner. Can he keep it on the exit, or is Barbakov going to get the slipstream straight back down into turn 1, because he's kept really close in that final corner. It looks like he's going to get the slipstream coming up towards turn 1 as well, but he's going to have to go to the outside, or he's going to try and switch back. No, he's going to have to stay around the outside. We've seen him lock up quite a few times so far into this corner. Or he's just hit tiny bit of a touch there on the back of Sokowski, but he manages to defend. So Barbakov is going to have to sit there in 5th place. And I do reckon that's getting to about lap 9. I think these guys might be pitting maybe this lap or next lap for a set of those alternate tyres.
Yeah, if it's going to be this lap, then it's going to be 2 lots of 13 lap stints on those alternate tyres, and you wouldn't expect them to pit on an even lap, really, because if you can do 13 laps, which you're going to have to if you pit on lap 10, you're going to have to do 13 laps at least once. So yeah, why would you make yourself do 12 on the? It just doesn't really make sense. So I think they will be in this lap. Not having known the fuel numbers myself, though, it's difficult to know. But that's part of the fun. Stopowski tries to get the power down, and all of that hard work for him now is undone. He's down to 6th place. IndyAM Harazel must have made a mistake somewhere along the line, by the way, because he was up in 5th not too long ago, pushed down to 7th now, but here's Stopowski, he's down in 6th. What happened? Just a simple loss of the traction, I think. Got on the curb, tried to catch it. You do kind of need to get the rear end out while you're on the traction in these cars, but not quite that much, obviously.
Yeah, he just bonked the inside curb there of turn 12, unsettled the car, and as you say, the rear end is a bit lively, and you do want to use it a little bit, but not that much. That was a little bit too much. And that sends him round. So that has given Barbakov some kind of clean air, because Brantholm isn't overly close just yet. But I'm still surprised that these guys haven't pit early, because from my calculations, there's about 13 or 14 laps in a stint, which if you times that twice for 2 alternate stints, that's somewhere in the region of lap 8 to 10. You can pit if you start on the prime tyres. So quite interesting. However, obviously, if you stay out longer, then you have less fuel to fill up, so you might save some time there. But these primes are pretty slow, so yeah. So maybe we'll see something happens there.
I think Konya was just off the road to the left-hand side there for some reason, just letting everybody through, running up towards the S's. But yeah, we'll see how this strategy plays out. It seems that if these guys are going to the likes of lap 12, 10 and 11 on their primary tyres, then they can't be going much longer on the alternates, otherwise, well, yeah, they just wouldn't really. So interesting to see that the fuel mileage maybe is not quite as good around here as it was at Sebring, because some guys were, I bet, contemplating even maybe a one-stop, given how long the fuel was here. So let's see with IndyAM Harazoa. This was quite a long time ago, by the way, but let's see what happened to him regardless. Coming up towards... Oh, that's difficult. That's easy to do, and it's a costly mistake when you make it as well, when you just lock up and get your right-hand side tyres on the grass there. You can get dragged out, and you can lose so much time from what in reality is a very small mistake.
Yeah, that corner, turn 4, is so difficult, so difficult. And if you get on that grass, as you saw, you just can't stop. So we are looking at Freelich, who has come into the pit lane. IndyAM Harazoa is also in the pit lane, so 2 Royal Blues, obviously choosing to pit on this lap. And unsurprisingly, he is on the alternate tyres, because why would you want to do two stints on those primes? Because they are pretty slow. So I'm sure we're going to see them go to the... Well, actually, that's interesting. It says he's on alternates, but the graphic is showing... The graphic on his actual tyres is showing primes, but I think that will update at some point.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, it looks a bit strange at the moment, but we can hold out hope that he is on alternates at the moment. We think he is anyway. But I had this question coming in on lap 10, to be honest, because you've got 25 laps to go. You're going to have to do a 13-lap stint at some point, so you must be able to do 13 laps on a tank of fuel. So why not do it twice and just put on lap 9 and save yourself an extra lap on the primaries? I don't really understand that, but I can understand going to lap 12, because it means you're going to have this many laps to go, and going to lap 12 isn't that sensible either, is it really? But we'll see if these guys do indeed pit, and one of them does. Barbakov, from the uppermost of those who are on the primaries, is in, and Brantholm is left there out on his own, locks them up, and now it is going to be red stripe tyres for Barbakov as well, as we're expecting. For all of these guys who started on primaries, they're going to be on these tyres till the end of the race now.
Yeah, certainly makes sense, these guys coming onto the alternate tyres. So for Barbakov, we have Freelich obviously coming down the pit road or down the start-finish line, I should say. Barbkov on the pit road, and that is obviously easy for him to keep that position, as he will also have slightly hotter tyres as well, because you mentioned there are no tyre warmers. So it's looking pretty good for Frillick there to hold on to that position. Obviously, Brentholm ahead of him still needs to make a pit stop. Hopefully Frillick doesn't have a little spin this time like he did last week. So here is Brentholm, third position, still out on those prime tyres. Oh, goes for a little bit of a wiggle. Does he lose his wing? Yes, he does. So that is quite a long way back to the pit lane from him, and also we'll have to then obviously stop for longer for the damage repairs as well.
It just all started as a small slide, that one really, and a bit of an overcorrection, and he would had it. So that was a real shame to see for Brentholm. And these two are much closer than I thought they were going to be. Godek and Vak very, very close together now as they come out of the pit lane. Prime tyres, it looks like, for Vak. We'll see what the graphic says, because obviously apparently the visuals can't always be trusted, but it looks like these guys have split their strategy now. So Godek goes again for the alternates, but now, given that Vak is not in the lead and not controlling this race anymore, he's doing something different himself as well. So these guys are just constantly battling with each other and constantly changing their strategies around depending on what the situation is. It's a very interesting game going on between these two at the moment.
Yes, sometimes the best way of doing or trying to get ahead of your teammate your opponent is just to do something different. So obviously, if he took the alternates as well, he knows he has to pass on track, and we've just been told the Vak's pit stop was actually shorter, which makes sense because obviously the gap has gone down a little bit. But that would also make sense if Vak is now going to do a shorter pit stop. Or did a shorter pit stop this time, because obviously you want to do a shorter stint on the primes where possible. And it looks like obviously a fuel tank goes more than a third of the race distance. So when you split that into 3 stints, you obviously get one shorter stint. So I would assume Vak is not going to do a full fuel tank on this set of tyres, which could be quite interesting with how that works out, because Godek is going to get quite a bit of a lead here and have the track position, but Vak is going to be absolutely steaming up to him in that final stint.
Yeah, it's going to all come to a head right at the end, I think, and that is going to be very exciting to watch. Indeed, it seems that these guys can only just do over third distance on a tank of fuel here, because they came in on lap 12, and if you times that by 3, it only makes 36, so it is pretty tight on fuel around here, and we're seeing at Sebring those guys running it extraordinarily long on one tank of fuel, but these guys just cannot get their fuel mileage to last very long at all. Here at VIR, so not entirely sure what that's all down to be honest. It's interesting to find out what is causing that, really, but a bit weird really to see the alternates only go 12 laps, and that spells trouble for those who pitted on lap 10 a little bit ago. It seems that they might have to do a little bit of fuel saving at some point throughout this race.
Yeah, it just depends on what strategy you want to do, really. Obviously they are locked on their the mixtures, so this is a fixed setup series, and that includes the fuel mixtures, so they are locked to the highest fuel mixture, which means obviously it's a little bit more difficult to save. That was obviously instigated to try and make them push a little bit more and not save. I would assume there's no real reason to save. It looks like 13 laps is what they did. Obviously that's including the formation lap. And by my calculations, you could get towards 14 laps as well, so that might be possible. But in this situation, especially with Vak and Godek, they're pushing so hard. I don't think they really have time to save fuel. But it will be interesting to see what these guys do as we get towards that final stint, because Godek is already quite a few seconds ahead.
Yeah, he is, and it's important for both of these guys at the moment. They're basically lapping against each other at the moment. It's basically just like a session on their own. It's almost like qualifying, but over an extended period of time now, because they're just racing against each other. They're not racing wheel to wheel, side by side, but they are absolutely neck and neck at the moment in terms of the times, and it doesn't even look like that right now because of the tyre difference that we're seeing. But when it happens a little bit later on and they're going to get closer together, we'll really see who nailed their prime tyre stint and who didn't. It's really important for both of these drivers that they stay on the track, make no mistakes. First of all, they need to be consistent, but they also need to be fast, and being all three of those things at one time is quite difficult, especially over a stint length, over 20 minutes or so. It's just going to be pure concentration on this set of tyres, and there cannot be any mistakes from either of them.
Yeah, mistakes is what cost you. As we saw with Freelik last time out, he might have had the opportunity to challenge Vac. He was very close indeed, but then he made that mistake, which ultimately cost him. So mistakes are what causes you to obviously lose out on these races. And with obviously his pit stop still to go, you want to keep yourself in contention. And for Vac, as we're seeing, we just saw on board there, he needs to just push, do his laps, and just know that the race is going to come back to him later on.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult mentality to be in right now, really, because you're seeing your rival go up the road, and there's not a lot you can do about it at the moment, and that makes things a little bit difficult to manage, and a little bit difficult to pace yourself as well. You can't overdrive the car, even though you're seeing Godek go up the road. You can't overdrive it and overdo it. That would make things even worse. So yeah, he's just got to be calm and figure out what he's doing here and do what he does best, which is just pumping out the lap times, being consistent. You just got to imagine there's nobody else around him at the moment, and just do his thing, and the result will follow. But Stopalski at the moment, we're currently riding on board. He's fighting the car ever so slight. Oh, he's fighting the car again there. That was a good save. Not quite as rotating as he was down at Oak Tree a few laps ago. But yeah, he is catching Barbakov. As messy as it does look sometimes, his driving style, it's clearly quick at the moment. And he's catching Barbakov once again.
Yeah, he's had a bit of an interesting day so far. And yeah, he just needs to start catching up if he can, as that gap has spread out just a little bit over the race so far. And we're seeing it come through this very interesting corner. As you said earlier, it's deceptively slow. A lot of people would think maybe, oh, it's flat out, it's just a kink, but it's actually down brake and downshifting 2 gears through that corner. It just goes along with the whole theme of this track being ultimately one of the most difficult tracks to drive, really. The layout doesn't look, overly complicated on paper, but when you get here, obviously this braking zone now, you've got to kink to left while braking to get it all slowed down for the chicane. Just things like this make it one of the more difficult tracks, along with this final corner, which you just understeer all the way through the mid corner before you finally get out. But certainly more interesting track. But very difficult indeed.
Yeah, it is. It's the elevation change here often makes circuits quite exciting. Like, think about circuits like Spa, where the elevation is kind of one of the draws to it. But as a driver here, the elevation really doesn't help you in any way. I think they've built it that way as well, to be honest, because the braking zone at the roller coaster kind of complex at the top of the hill there doesn't help you in the slightest. It kind of bends away from you, and the car runs away from you on the entry to the corner, and then at the final corner, as you just mentioned, that the car runs away from you again, understeers into that never-ending grass where you can just never get out of, and that left-hander as well, which goes downhill and makes things very difficult indeed, especially when you've already got a little bit of a loose car anyway, and then you go through that corner, it's just 10 times worse again. So yeah, the elevation hit, there's like not many places where the elevation does change. It's very subtle in most places, but where it does change, it really does affect you, and it really affects you in a negative way as well. It's not like the turn 1 at Kota, for example, where the gravity kind of slows you down. You can brake it about 25 metres for a hairpin. It is seriously difficult, this circuit, especially on those parts where it's sloping away from you.
Well, I'm just clicked on board with Freelik, and he is off the track once again at that final corner, as he was obviously off there earlier as well, so he's going to lose quite a bit of time in his battle with Barbakov. He was starting to get a little bit away. We're going to see a replay now, I'm sure, of what he did. And it's this tricky little chicane. You've got to get all over the curbs, but just see a little bit of a flick there during the weight transfer. The rear got out of him, and then he has to draw him back. Unfortunately, he actually had quite a big gap. He's actually still got about 2.5 second lead to Barbakov. Such was his pace advantage over Barbakov. So Yeah, Barkov has struggled a little bit for speed in this series. And Frick there being gifted a mistake, really, because he's so far behind Vak, it doesn't really matter. It's all about his battle for that third place. And Barkov isn't really putting enough pressure on Frelik to take any sort of advantage from that.
Well, he was closing on Vak a little bit earlier on, but that's obviously to do with the tyres, and he might have been able to get there if it was a little bit quicker and a little bit more consistent, but that mistake has definitely put the nail in that particular coffin. So he's going to be fighting over the final podium spot, and that is going to be an interesting battle now between Frelik, Barbakov and Stopalski. They're all pretty well matched on pace. They're all on the same tyre strategy from here. And I'd argue that maybe even the faster, or just ever so slightly faster driver in that group of three is Stopalski, and he's the last of those three in the group. So we are going to see some overtaking in this battle, and he's, well, not about to make one, but he's certainly thinking about making one on Barbakov now, because he's got him well within range, almost picking up a bit of a slipstream now, going down into turn one. So obviously way too far back at this point, but in a lap or two's time, we could really start to see some punches being thrown in this battle for fourth.
Yeah, this battle is going to come raging. I would assume Stokowski's had quite an interesting race, and this would be a really good opportunity for him. Obviously, he's actually tied on points with Frelik as well, so for the championship predicament, it's actually quite important that he gets past Barbakov as well, because we mentioned this before. After a third place, there is only 1 point per driver. So as you go down, there's only 1 point. So even if you're 5 points behind someone, you might be like, oh, it's only 5 points. But that's 5 positions. So getting every single position is what counts. So if Stokowski can get past Barbakov here and try and chase down Frelik, that could be quite good for the championship hunt, as he's getting very close here now. Coming through turn 11 now, through turn 12, out of Oak Tree Corner, onto the back straight. He's going to be close enough to get a slipstream, but will it be enough at the end of this straight?
Well, it's a big slipstream that you get on this straight now, so it doesn't really matter about your exit, and it wasn't a great one from Stopalski, but as you can see now, it didn't really matter, and he's great on the brakes, so will he be able to perform a similar move to what he did earlier? Oh, that was the car nearly getting away from him there, actually, despite the fact he broke relatively early to what we've seen in the past from him. So no heroic dive bombs on this particular occasion, but definitely some pressure beginning to mount on Barbakov. And not too many laps left in these tyres and on this stint just yet. We've got about 3 laps to go at the end of the... So 4 as they cross the line now, because the leader, Godek, is so far in front. He's already on lap 20. So yeah, 2 or 3 more, and then these guys will be in for their final pit stops, which is not too far away at all now. But Stopalski really wants to make a bit of progress. The only problem is he's not quite as consistent as those around him, so... he's just locking up here and there, going wide every now and again, and so it might spell trouble for him when he does get in front, or if he gets in front, of course.
Ooh.
And see what I mean? Like just that, just making those little kind of mistakes, and it means you can't get through, and when you do get through, it means you can't hold on to the position either. So Stopalski really needs to iron out those mistakes if he wants to consolidate his place in fourth.
Yeah, he needs to just be a tiny bit calmer. However, that corner specifically that he was spinning through turn 6, such a difficult part of the track to get on the power there. It's not the easiest rear end to drive on this car, but he's now got an opportunity. He's going to be there quite late once again, but we know how good he is on the brakes. You saw this before, maybe a bit better than Barbakov. He's going to go side by side, but once again, he's going to be on the outside. Is Barbakov going to squeeze him out on the exit? Oh yeah, a bit of contact between the two, and that is the place kept once again from Barbakov in that chicane. But a little bit more contact once again, so these two need to be a bit careful to not put each other off.
Yeah, stern defending once again from Barbakov. I don't think there was anything particularly wrong with it. It's not like he ran Stopalski out of road, but he did come into the side of the car there quite heavily, and a big lock up into turn 1. He defends immediately as he realises his mistake. Now is there going to be a bit of traction for Stopalski? Well, there's not really any for either of them, just looking at that shot just there. And now through 2 and 3, nothing doing through here, way too tight and twisty to make any moves, but Stopalski definitely asserting himself as the faster of these two drivers, and despite the battling that they're actually having, they're not losing very much time to Freelik, as Stepowski just loses it again through that corner. He did it last lap and he's done it again.
Obviously, he's getting a tiny bit of dirty air through there as well, as him trying to push as hard as he can to get the exit onto the straight. So, combination of those two things making it very difficult. But he keeps it through there pretty nicely. Turn 10, one of the obviously the hardest corners, and two completely different lines through those drivers. And he is a lot closer. He's going to have the slipstream a little bit closer than he has on the previous laps, which could help him get side by side just that bit earlier. But Barbkov, once again, is in a decent position to defend here. He's going to make him go to the inside of that little kink, but Stepkowski brakes way later. He's got the car length ahead, and he makes that position finally after quite a few laps of trying. But can he now hold on to it as he comes into the final corner? Barbkov's obviously just behind, and we'll now get the slipstream all the way down this start-finish straight, as Vac is in on those prime tyres, obviously coming now back out onto the alternates. He's going to get in the way a little bit from Stepkowski. What is this going to do for this battle? Because obviously Barbkov may want his teammate to try and help him a little bit here. But Vac is probably going to be way quicker and is now going to have to try and get through Stepkowski. So this has actually not worked out very well at all from Barbkov. He's been overtaken and now there's a car in between them as well.
He's not worked out very well for Vac either, because he wanted to be straight out the pit lane and straight into clean air, but he has taken the earlier pit stop there. 14 laps he's going to have to do now, pitted on lap 21 on those primes, which is the longest stint we're going to see all day. But Vac really wanted to be in clean air so that he can pump out the lap times and close in on Godek, but now he's being paced at the moment by Stepowski, who is not as quick as Vac at the moment, so that is going to be pretty gut-wrenching for him. He needs to get past as quickly as possible, but he might have his job made very easy. Stepowski somehow manages to keep it on the road. He's going to be under very much pressure though, going into the roller coaster complex once again. Closing. This massive slipstream effect that we get down the back straight, but I don't think it's anywhere near close enough for a move. Stepowski, is he going to come into the pit lane at the end of this? I'd say he's probably going to wait at least one more.
Yeah, there's a decent amount of slipstream, but you do have to be obviously close enough to get it. I think Vac was just outside there, but look how much more grip he's got through those final couple of corners. Stepkowski, does he jump in? Yes, he does, as well as Freelik just ahead of him. So a couple of guys now coming in for their final pit stops. But Godek is still out there, so now Vac needs to push to try and get this undercut to work. Obviously, he's going to have hot tyres when he comes out as well, which might hinder or help him, I should say, once Godek comes out on cold tyres. But there's going to be a decent gap between them either way, because obviously Godek would have gained quite a lot of time being on those alternate tyres. However, Godek will go to the primes. He has to, because you've got to use both types of tyres. So Vac is going to come really quickly at him, although as you said, it's going to be 14 laps, which means he might have to do a tiny bit of saving here and there.
Yeah, that is, as I said, the longest stint we're going to see all day long, and that's going to make things a little bit difficult. You don't want to be fuel saving in your final stint where you're supposed to be chasing down the race leader for an illustrious race victory, so that's going to make things ever more complicated for Vac in this race. He's got nearly a minute to make up at the moment, but don't forget Godek has got a whole pit stop and prime tyres to put on, which is going to really shoot down that margin. And I think we are going to see a battle towards the end of this race. Either way, even if we're not, it's going to get very, very close, and it's going to be a nail-biting finish for both parties involved.
Oh, Freelik is off at turn 11. This might give an opportunity for Stepkowski to come back, although Stepkowski is actually not quite close enough, but he's certainly closed in a little bit. So once again, Freelik making a little bit of a mistake, but both times in the last 5 laps where he's made mistakes, he's gotten away with it regarding the track position. But that could be bad, because now Barbkov is coming into the pit lane, so this could alter where he comes out as well. We could be looking towards a 3-way fight here for that final podium position once again.
Yeah, that'll be very, very exciting to witness. Goodness me, that was another good catch from Stepowski. As does Freelik keep it on the road through the final corner? He does indeed. He's had massive troubles so far tonight with that one in qualifying and earlier on in this race as well. Barbkov has been in and he is behind both of these guys, as we were expecting. Brantholm is in front of both of them as well, but he's still got to make another pit stop in this race. and he should make it before they actually get to him. So he won't be oh, as Barbakov spins out of the pit lane, that is not good for him at all. And luckily for him, Adrian Harazoa is a long way behind, so he's never going to catch up to Barbakov. But still, that definitely puts any chances of a podium out of the window now for the Bulgarian.
Cold tyres is something that we mentioned. Fortunately, most drivers have actually been pretty good on it. But yeah, look at that. The rear grip just wasn't there. He didn't necessarily do anything wrong. But yeah, just cold tyres, using them or leaning on them a little bit too much in that first corner. And he's lost a couple of seconds there. So he is now potentially out of this fight from that podium position, because he's now around 15 seconds behind all in. So yeah, quite a long way he's dropped behind now. As on board with Freelich, he's got Branholm just ahead of him, but as you say, Branholm should be getting out of the way fairly soon. We're coming up to 11 laps to go. I believe Branholm needs to take the another set of the autos as well, so he probably is going to come in now, which he does. So that leaves Freelich a nice gap to go and fight with Stepkowski towards the end of the race, but there's still a couple of seconds between them.
Yeah, it is going to be a fight as well, I think. I think that Stepkowski is just ever so slightly the faster driver than Freelich, so we are going to see a fight for that final podium place in this race. They're both tied in second in the championship, by the way, as well, Freelich and Stepkowski.
Oh, they're battling now.
And they are battling now already, so Freelich must have made a mistake of some description, or Stepkowski's had a mind-blowing first sector, because it was over a second as they went over the line, and now we have a fight on. So race leader in the pit lane and races on for the podium.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. Fighting for second in the championship. They are equal on points with 2 races to go, including this one. So this is quite important. The ironic thing is only for 1 point difference. There's only 1 point difference between third and fourth place. So they need to try and get that point, because that could be all important. However, the race next, or 2 weeks' time, from Apple Valley is obviously a lot more predictable with it being an oval race. However, Stepkowski now getting that slipstream. He's going to have to do the thing he's done all day and go through the kink on the inside, which makes it so difficult. As Freelich goes on the grass, and he's going to lose the position there. He's actually kept on the track, so fair play, but he has lost the position there. 4th place for Freelich and 3rd place for Stepkowski.
You could see that Freelich knew about that late braking manoeuvres from Stepkowski. He knew that was coming, and he did everything he could to stop it by sending it deep into the roller coaster complex, but he just ran out of grip, ran out of braking performance. As you said, remarkably keeps it on the road, but unfortunately can't keep his 3rd place in the race, can't keep his 2nd place in the championship either. That looks like it might go to Stepkowski now, who gains a point over Freelich. But as it stands, with Vak getting a 2nd place, he's still going to lose 2 points. So it means a 24-point deficit heading into the final race. Anything 7th or better for Vak and Apple Valley at this point will do, which is a very doable task for him, considering the calibre of driver that he is and has shown to be throughout this season.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a few extra drivers coming to the oval races, as well as Freelich. Freelich once again goes on the grass. So Freelich starting to make a few mistakes now, actually, as I believe he made a mistake in turn 1 on this lap as well. But we are on board with Vak, who's now, quite a few seconds behind Godek, who has now made his pit stop. So Godek is out on those prime tyres. 22 seconds is the gap. Can Vak do that? That's a big jump. That is a big jump. Although it's actually gone down to about 19 seconds now. Obviously, the gap does fluctuate a little bit with the R-Factor 2 live times. So it's about 19 seconds there. So we'll see. Can he do that? That's going to be difficult. 2 seconds a lap. But that's to be honest, that is actually going to be quite difficult. 2 seconds a lap. But if anyone can, Vak can, because he has been the pace leader so far this season.
Well, you say it's a very difficult margin to close, but Godek has driven fast enough to make the gap that large, so surely Vak is able to close the gap in at the same rate, because they're very close on pace. We saw that in the first stint. They came into the pit lane about 5 seconds apart. They actually left nose to tail. So Godek must have driven well enough on his stint to make the gap 20 seconds large. So Vak must be surely by that logic, good enough to close that 20-second margin. I know it's not quite as simple as just closing a 20-second margin just like that, giving or taking away 2 seconds a lap and more. But yeah, it is a tall order, but I think it is still doable for Vac. As he said, if anybody can do it, it is him. Taken 2 race wins so far this season, never finished outside the top 2. Doesn't look like that's going to change today, but it might be the second step of the podium for the pole today.
And interestingly, the fastest lap of the race, though, Godek is 1 second quicker than Vac on their fastest lap. Now, having said that, Vac obviously was on the primes last stint, whereas Godek was on the alternates, and now the real road is coming up a little bit higher, and the rubber's going down. But either way, about a second between them on just their fastest laps alone, which is quite a big gap. So Vac isn't going to have it easy catching up, that is for sure. And we'll have to see at the end of this lap, because Godek's last lap was obviously his out lap, so this is his first time lap, and then we'll be able to see exactly the pace difference between these two. But now on board with Brandholm, getting very close to Barbakov here for 5th place.
Yeah, he is, and I wasn't expecting that actually. I know Barbakov made that mistake a few laps ago, and I thought that would close up the margin, but I thought, to be honest, that Barbakov was a faster driver, although clearly Brandholm is really finding his feet in the late stages of the race, closing in now in this battle for 5th place. Barbakov was really quite much quicker towards the start of the season, I would argue. But still hasn't managed to grab a podium yet, and that doesn't look like changing today either. I think with a little bit more consistency, a few less mistakes than that spin that we saw has really put an end to that. But a podium is not impossible. Maybe in 2 weeks' time at Apple Valley he can get it, but all over the grass there, and ovals are a completely different thing. So we'll see how he gets on now, and we'll see how he gets on in this battle as well, because it is really starting to close up. As I said, all in the grass, getting a terrible run up towards the S's, but he's still got that track position. However, Brandholm's going to have a huge slipstream on this back straight now.
Yeah, as you say, ovals are a bit of a lottery sometimes, depending on when cautions come out and things like that. So you want to be getting your points now on the road course races, that you know there's pretty much not going to be any cautions. It's just you and the drivers you're racing against. And now Brandholm's catching him right at the end of the straight. Is he going to have enough? Oh no, he actually just backed out that one a little bit. But he knows that he's probably going to be able to do that if he can stay close enough on the next lap. So we're now having a look at him come through sector 3. Had a bit of a wiggle there. But yeah, he's staying close enough. Just not quite close enough to make a move. And they're now coming up behind Perseus Miram, who I think just had a spin coming out of the final corner. Obviously a lap down to them. That is not ideal when you're batting 4 positions. Let's see what Brandholm can do on this lap as they get past Miram there in turn number 1. Brandholm looks like he's a little bit closer, coming up towards turn 3 and 4. NASCAR bend, this one's called, ironically, because it's obviously a left-handed corner. Now into this really difficult sequence of corners in 5A and 5B. And then through the snake, Brandholm not quite close enough actually. Barbakov is doing well to hold on for now.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of corner names, for a start, NASCAR bend looks absolutely nothing like a NASCAR bend, so I don't know why they've gone with that one. And quite frankly, the track map that I've got up at the moment makes me a bit sick with the amount of A's and B's that are on it. It's quite horrendous. Don't go and Google it because it does cause health problems, but either way, it is not an easy circuit to define in terms of how many turns there actually are. However, it is certainly challenging. Brandholm finding it a bit challenging to get through on Barbakov as well at the moment. Just crept up to 1 second through the oak tree complex of corners at the right west end of the circuit. Sorry, the east end, the opposite end. He made a big mistake, especially on traction, which really hampered his run on that back straight. And so he was nowhere near close enough into the roller coaster beats, already closing in once again. So he is definitely just a little bit quicker.
And we've now got 5 laps to go for these guys. 5 laps to go in the race. And, 6 laps to go actually. 6 laps to go in the race, including this one that they are on. So we're going to have to see how that one works out for these guys. Because obviously 6 laps starting to get the pressure coming on as well. So maybe one of these guys is going to make a mistake. But Barbakov is holding on for now. So that is looking fairly good. An interesting fact is that I just had a look. Thomas Vack was only 0.6 quicker than Godek, which is quite surprising. You'd expect him to be a little bit quicker, a little bit more difference between those tyres. So it looks like Godek might be able to hold on here for this race victory. So we will continue to look, see if Branholm can get close enough to finally make a move. The issue is you've got to stay close through that corner there, turn 10, which is hard enough as it is, and then this braking into this double apex right-hander, and then finally through Oak Tree corner. But look how close he is this time. Actually, this might be enough for Branholm to get past before even the braking zone. But what can the Swede do as he comes up? Barbkov is going to have to defend on the inside, so Branholm goes the other side of Barbkov this time, which means he is going to have the track position, and he's going to make that on the brakes as long as he doesn't lock up, which he hasn't done. So Barbkov now down to 6th place. He's done well, but Branholm's managed to get that one. However, once again, you can always slipstream back down into turn number 1, so this isn't over for Barbkov.
Oh, he might be. Well, it wasn't a bad exit, actually. I thought he was going to really lose the car there, but he saved it, and now he's right in the slipstream once again as they go over the line. Is he close enough? It's going to have to be pretty heroic on the brakes if he's going to go for it, and he isn't. He stays behind for now, but Branholm did go a little bit wide there, just opening the door ever so slightly, but then slamming it shut again and really putting the foot down, getting away ever so slightly. But yeah, you can see at the front of the race at the moment that the gap between Godek and Vac is visually not closing. If you've been monitoring the gap on the top left-hand side of your screen at the moment where you've been watching, it is not actually closing that much, really. You said 6 tenths on the previous lap. They're just about to complete another lap, or Vac is anyway, so we'll get another reading in a moment. But yeah, it's just not closing. Barely at all. Definitely not closing at the rate that it needs to become a battle. So somewhere along the line, Godek has done an absolutely monster stint. I think it was probably won in that second stint, to be honest. Yeah. He's been much faster than Vac was or is doing right now, and I'm not sure what it is really, but that's alternate prime stint seems to always prevail here. I think it's prevailed 4 times out of 4 now in the IndyAM Championship. So yeah, it's obviously it's a different ball game in the Pro Championship because there's other factors to come into play, but every single time this strategy just seems to come out on top, and there's no real contest even when Thomas Vac is on the alternate strategy. Yeah,
I think the main reason why it works is because you get that track position early and you're not having to chase. So when you're chasing, that's when it just gets a bit harder. Every little mistake counts even more. But yeah, it just seems to be that it's working. Vac obviously had to try something different. He was behind. Godek looked like the quicker driver, so fair enough. He wanted to try something himself. But yeah, hasn't seemed to work because that gap just isn't coming down. It's still around, 20 seconds, give or take. And even last lap, he was only 6 tenths quicker. So very weird how it's not coming down even more. But that just shows you the pace of Godek, to be honest. Godek was very close to getting pole position, didn't quite do it, and then he managed to, despite dropping back a bit at the start. Oh, Thomas Vac's coming into the pit lane. What is Thomas doing? Vac is coming in now for another pit stop. I can't see a penalty.
Oh, and off the road, Freelich, sorry, at the Oak Tree corner as well. So that's an interesting one from 4th place. He's gone off at that right-hander. It's interesting to see what Vac is doing right now, but he looks like he's just going to get out ahead of Stopowski. Not entirely sure why you would put a new set of tyres on there, but I don't think there has been a front wing change or anything. I don't think there's been an accident for Vac, so that is a bit of a confusing one. He might have just decided that he was never going to get the lead anyway. This might answer what we were thinking about. Well, it doesn't really, because he just seems to come into the pit lane to our mind, so maybe he is just going for, I don't even know if he's just going for fastest lap or what he's doing here, but he's clearly decided that he's never going to catch Godek up in front, and he might as well get a new set of tyres on or something.
Yeah, Thomas Lenz, race director, just suggesting, because he had that longer stint, maybe he actually underfueled. So maybe the one reason why he can't go so quick is because he was having to save a little bit of fuel, and now he's realised that's never going to happen. So he's just pitting to be safe, as he came out in 2nd place anyway. So that could have been what it was, because we did say at the time it was the 14-lap stint that we weren't really expecting, but He was trying it, but yeah, it didn't work. The strategy just hasn't been right. Ironically, because he's been the one who's got the strategy perfect in the last 2 races. So
Yeah.
and it's not completely over because obviously Stepkowski's coming behind, but I think Thomas did change tyres. Therefore, he's going to have enough pace as we are coming up to the. Well, we are already on. Well, we've got 2 laps to go, I should say, after this one. So yeah, looking quite good for Godek as he's now got over a 40-second lead.
Stepkowski has made a mistake through the final corner, though. They were closing a minute ago, so mistakes really starting to creep in. We saw Freelich a lap or 2 ago. Now we've seen Stepkowski off the road. Let's have a guess what happens here. Going too hot into the final corner. Oh, just missing the apex, actually. And going for a very long and pretty soul-destroying trip through the grass there. And he bobbled his way back onto the circuit as well. That was a shaky moment in itself, but he's going to get a podium out of this one, is Stepkowski, and he'd be glad that Freelich is not behind him anymore, because otherwise he would have lost that third place completely with that mistake. The last thing that Godek has to negotiate here is pretty much is one of the lap cards. I think this is Adrian Harazoa at the moment. Just pulling to the left-hand side, and I couldn't quite see who he was, but I'm going to presume that it might be. Either way, we're on to the final lap now, and yeah, I just don't see why Vax felt the need to do that 14-lap stint right at the end. If he was going to be so slow saving the fuel, then he might as well have just done an extra lap or 2 and taken the pain on the prime tyres, to be honest.
Yeah, that could have been a like a snowball effect, because he might have had to pit the lap that he did, because maybe he didn't take enough fuel in his prime stint, so he wasn't able to make. Yeah, so he obviously wasn't able to make.
Oh yeah,
because
his stop was shorter. Remember, his stop was shorter. Okay, this is all falling into.
Yeah, so he probably didn't take enough fuel. Yeah, he didn't take enough fuel to basically have it so his stint at the end was either 12 or 13. Because obviously, once you pit that first time, if you've underfueled, you've underfueled. You can't change it apart from doing a little splash and dash, because you can only fill up a full tank of fuel. So yeah, that's why again your pit stops is correct, and that is definitely what Godek has done. He's leading by well over 40 seconds now as he comes up into the final sector for the final time. Lap 35 of the race for him, and he's looked quick all season. He's got a couple of podiums so far already to his name, but finally 2 second places in fact to his name, but finally out of the final corner he's going to take victory in the 4th round of the race IndyAM Championship by FSR. What a race from Godek. Despite falling back at the beginning, he managed to get himself back up and do the strategy that he needed. Thomas Vack, championship leader, will continue to lead the championship and is looking very good to win the championship next time out. But it is not over mathematically, so he does need to make sure he has a somewhat decent race next time out when we go to Apple Valley in 2 weeks' time for the final race of the AM Championship. And he comes around the final corner now to beat Stepkowski 2 second place by quite a way, actually. Stepkowski making a couple of mistakes there, and obviously just being slower on those older tyres, with Vack making that final pit stop. So he comes around the final corner to get on the podium. So Stepkowski now gets 3rd place for the 3rd race in a row to go up to 2nd place in the championship as well, I believe, with that one. And now Simon Freelich in 4th place. He's getting chased down by Branholm, actually, as we come towards the final sector. This isn't over. Branholm might get him to the line. But Branholm's gone onto the grass. Can he keep it back on the track? Yes, he can. So he will get, Freelich will get 4th. Branholm will get 5th. Almost at the end there, but not quite close enough before Barbkov in 6th place. And Andrea Maharazoa will come around to be the final person on the lead lap in 7th place for Royal Blue. But Ewan, that was certainly quite an interesting race, although actually first we'll see a replay of Branholm there getting close enough, but not quite close enough.
Yeah, that grass on the left-hand side there is absolutely vicious, by the way. You see the way it kind of slopes downwards very abruptly. His car was almost at 45 degrees with the way it slopes down there. It's pretty harsh, actually. And a big mistake, but I don't know what, I don't know what he's doing really, but there you go, finding ways to make the circuit a little bit shorter, and there you go, into the pit lane. But yeah, a great race from him. the first person to really dethrone Vac. I know that Stanley won the first race at the Indianapolis GP circuit, but that was a race cut short with some issues, so it was hard to tell whether that race would pan out the way we thought it would or not. So this feels like the proper first dethroning that we've seen of Vac, and it was expertly done really by Godek. He had no challenge really in the final stint there. He kind of I don't know. Vac kind of brought that upon himself, really. He made a mistake himself, and he was forced into that mistake by Godek, so it was a great drive from it.
Yeah, so my maths is that Vac will be leading by 24 points to Stepkowski. So 24 points is a lot. There isn't any sort of double points for these guys. It's straight up 35 points, then 30, and then 28 before going 1 point down to 30th place. So it's very unlikely. Vac pretty much needs to DNF with those guys scoring quite a lot of points to return. So it looks like Thomas Vac is probably going to be the champion, but as we said, it is not all over, so you will need to tune in 2 weeks' time for the final race of the IndyAM Championship on the 1st of November. We will be in Apple Valley, as we said previously. The Indy 300, the AM race at the Indy 300 is more of like a pre-qualifier. It's not part of the championship. The championship does finish in 2 weeks' time on the 1st of November. But Ewan, I think that pretty much rounds it up here for the AM Championship. We have the Indy Pro Championship coming up on the Races YouTube channel in about 40 minutes time, so do go check that out, where we have the sprint race as well, a few more tyre rules, so a little bit more of an interesting strategy for those guys. So that has been the IndyAM Championship by FSR, brought to you by 3D Wrap SimLab and IMB Raceway. And until the 1st of November or the Pro Race later today, we wish you a very warm goodbye.